Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about some of the big time games to watch in week 5 and week 6 of the 2024 season. And now it's time for Spotlight Wednesday. And today it is all about the Utah Utes. And when you talk about the Utah Utes, all you have to talk about really is Cam Rising and can he stay healthy? That is what this season will be defined by. That's what this season will come down to. I think we all understand that both Bryson Barnes and Nate Johnson have transferred out of the program for obvious reasons with Cam Rising coming back. So there's no safety net. There's no longer these two guys that have starting experience that you know you can go to and at least play good football. There is a little bit of a bottoming out after Cam Rising, so his health is absolutely paramount. But Kyle Whittingham is one of the best coaches in the country. I had him, I believe, at 9 in my rankings of the top 10 coaches. If you want to go check that out and tear apart my top 10, you're more than welcome to. But he's someone that gets the best out of all of his players. He obviously does not have the best talent to work with in the country. Utah is quite far down on that list, but he always has really, really good teams. But they are losing a ton of really big time players to the portal, to the next level, to whatever. So on the offensive side of the ball, Jaquindon Jackson, the really, really good running back that did have some injury troubles throughout the year, but was still a big part of that offense, has transferred to Arkansas. So some guys are going to have to step up in the backfield like they did a year ago. Devon Vele, the electric wide receiver that was a huge part of that offense and a huge reason why they stayed afloat last year, is heading off to the next level. So some big holes to fill at skill positions on the offensive side of the ball, but defense is really where they get hit the hardest. Sione Vake, who also played offense, so I guess that's a double hit on both sides of the ball, and then Cole Bishop on the back end of that defense. Both really, really good safeties that made every smart play when they needed to make it. So that's not necessarily something that you come by very easily. It's not something that is taken for granted by any means. But both those guys off to the next level. And then edge rusher Jonah Ellis was an absolute game wrecker. He changed so many games for that team, kept them in a ton of games that maybe they shouldn't have been in. So he's someone that is absolutely maybe impossible to fully replace, but you can recreate him, as they said in Moneyball. You're not going to replace him with one guy, but you might be able to replace him with 3 or 4. So it'll be interesting to see how they develop that. But this team does bring back a ton of guys. They bring back a ton of veteran leadership that will help them immensely going into the Big-12. And Cam Rising is obvious. He's the number one guy. He is the vocal leader. He is the spiritual leader. He is everything for this team. But the two guys next to him, Micah Bernard and Jalen Glover at the running back position, are very, very good running backs. They stepped in huge when Jaquindon Jackson went down a number of times last season and played some big-time snaps and are really, really good running backs, kind of different styles as well, which always can help an offense. So two guys that, although you're losing probably your best running back in Jaquindon Jackson, Micah Bernard is not too far behind him by any means. And Jalen Glover might honestly be the most talented of the group. He just is a little bit younger. So I'm very excited to see what he can do. And the O-line returns a ton of talent. There are a ton of guys that, whether they're redshirt freshmen that are starting to get their chance or older guys that are more experienced. Kyle Whittingham is always going to have a good offensive line. They're always going to be really tough at the point of attack. So I'm not super worried about them. They have tons of talent there, and if you can protect Cam Rising, that is, there's a ton that can go right for this offense. That's for sure. Another couple of guys on offense that are going to be just huge are transfers Tayshawn Lyons from Washington and Dorian Singer, especially from USC. Them going along with Money Parks is really a formidable trio, a trio that honestly would rival any other one in the Big 12, might be the best in the Big 12. So tons of talent at that wide receiver position. Obviously, bringing in transfers is a little bit of a hit or miss proposition, but still tons to look forward to at that position where they haven't necessarily had the top-end talent in the past. So with Dorian Singer, now you really have it because the dude can really play. And then the back end of that defense is facing, obviously, Sione Vaki and Cole Bishop leaving. Teo Johnson is the guy. He is going to be the leader of this back end, maybe the leader of this entire defense. He's moving to free safety after playing last year at nickel, where he started, I think, every game, maybe only 12 of 13, but a ton of games, has a ton of experience under his belt, and is just a remarkable player. They also have Gilman at safety, who's going to be huge. He was a transfer over from Stanford who played a ton of ball, so he's someone that could definitely step in. And then Cameron Calhoun, a guy that came over from Michigan at corner, will definitely have to be an immediate impact player because this back end, losing those two incredible safeties affects a lot more than just the safety position. So you're going to need as many good corners, as many good nickels, as many good back-end players, really, as you can get your hands on if you're Utah. So maybe they go back into the portal after spring, I don't know, but as of right now, that's what their back-end looks like, and they'll need some guys to really, really step up. But at the end of the day, when I look at this defense, they're losing a lot of guys. They're going to have to, make some things work, but I've given up on trying to act like Kyle Whittingham and Morgan Scaley are not going to put together a really, really good defense. They always have a defense that plays really fast, really aggressive, really physical, so I'm not going to question that. I think they will be more than fine on the defensive side of the ball. I think both these guys are just remarkable developers at pretty much every position. They have a really good staff over there, so I'm not necessarily worried about the defensive side of the ball, and I'm not overly worried about the offensive side of the ball. If you look at it on paper, there is a ton of talent on that team. Cam Rising obviously leading the way. If he can put the ball where it needs to be, when it needs to be, a phrase I feel like I've said 10 different times in this hour, everything's going to be great for this offense. They have two really good running backs. They have tons of wide receivers to throw to. They have good tight ends. They have a good offensive line. So they should be okay if Cam Rising can stay healthy. That's really the inflection point of this entire season, of this entire team, and of a lot of different things for Utah football, because if the health goes poorly again this year and he's not able to play the entire season and your team kind of bottoms out, that is a bad year for that to happen, because first year in the Big-12, you want to be able to set a precedent that you are one of the big-time teams in this conference. It helps you with recruiting. It helps you with everything. So if they were to go 8-4 in their first year and kind of set them back a little bit, I think it could affect how people look at Utah going forward and how maybe some transfers look at Utah going forward. So this is a big year, no doubt about it, and Cam Rising staying healthy is huge. Obviously, the 2 years that he was healthy at Utah, Pac-12 titles. The 1 year that he was not, 8-5. So a very big difference between those two things, and you just got to hope that he's healthy. But let's jump into the schedule really quickly, because it's obviously a little bit different. They start with an easy win over Southern Utah, and then they jump right into Big 12 play. They get Baylor coming to Utah to face off against them. Should be a win for them, especially getting it at home, but that definitely will be a very interesting game and definitely will show us a lot about what Utah can bring to the Big 12 this upcoming year. Then they play Utah State at Utah State. Never a good idea to play a team that is a solid team like Utah State or App State at App State, or basically Tulane at Tulane. Don't play these teams at their homes. Make them come to you, because the second you go away from your home, things get a little bit more sketchy. So that's definitely a game to watch. And then they have the first road trip as a Big 12 member to Oklahoma State. And I just hope it's not a night game for their sake, because Boone Pickens at night is an absolute nightmare. It's a great environment regardless, but especially at night, it is just insane. As a lot of you know, that sky is just a little bit darker than most skies. I don't know how they do that, but it is quite the scene at Boone Pickens at night. And then back home for a huge one against Arizona, one that is going to set a lot of narratives, a lot of the hierarchy in the Big 12 this year will definitely be defined by that game a lot. And then they finally get a bye. And after the bye, they have 3 games that they should win in Arizona State, TCU, at TCU at home, and then at Houston. 3 games that likely are wins on the schedule right now, but a lot of stuff can happen. So it'll be interesting to see what team they are by that time and where they sit in the Big 12 and how they take care of business in those. And then the final 4 games after the bye are kind of interesting. BYU at home should be a win, but BYU has a ton of unknowns, so we will figure out a lot more about them throughout the season coming up to this point. Then they go to Boulder to take on Colorado, and that's the scary one. That's the one that could get a little bit sketchy for them if they're not careful, because as we know, Colorado's got talent. They're not hurting for talent by any means, so that could be a sneaky one. And then Iowa State at home to finish off the season is really interesting. I think Utah will absolutely be favored in that game, but Iowa State's very sneaky. We talked about Rocco Becht yesterday. He is someone that could definitely throw a wrench into the works for some of these Big 12 teams, and I think he's someone that I really like and could really ruin Utah's season at the end of it right there. And then they go down to Orlando, all the way down to Orlando to play UCF, which will be very, very interesting. I think they should win that game, but again, Gus Malzahn is a tricky bastard and is someone that I shouldn't have said bastard there. I apologize. He is a tricky guy, and he is someone that could definitely get a big time upset if they're not careful in that game. So tons of things to watch for this Utah team. They should be at the forefront of the Big 12 this upcoming year, and the health is really the important part. If Cam Rising is on the field, I feel very good about him. If he's not, I don't feel quite as great about him. So it'll be very interesting to see what they can do. They could definitely meet Kansas State for a spot in the playoff in Dallas. So it'll be very interesting to see how all of this kind of unfolds. I'm very happy we get to see Kyle Whittingham possibly on the big stage in the playoffs. So very excited to see what happens there. But for now, that will do it for this edition of the GSMC College Football Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It makes a huge difference for us. Also, we invite you to follow us on Facebook or X, TikTok, Instagram, all of the different apps to get all of the content and updates. We have tons of people doing incredible work across pretty much every sport you could think of. So definitely check out all of those. Again, apologies for my potty mouth a second ago. Definitely shouldn't have done that. I do apologize. But that'll do it for this edition of the GSMC College Football Podcast, and I will see you guys tomorrow.